Okay guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for coming. This is an awesome turnout. Obviously more than we expected because we're trying to find chairs in every corner of the building. But I'm just going to go ahead and get started, give you guys a brief introduction of all of our panel members. And thank you for coming. Our first panel member is Chris Myklebust. He has a bachelor's in business administration with a management emphasis from Regis in Denver, and also a degree in electronics engineering technology. Prior to his state service, he served as a consultant that specialized in mergers and acquisitions, regulations, legal compliance, marketing, and business operations. He's also professionally licensed in securities and real estate, and he has been currently serving as a state commissioner of financial services since 2006. Our next panel member is Kerry Whitaker, and he has a bachelor's in international affairs from CU Boulder, a master's in political science that he's currently working on at CU Denver. Prior to his state service, he was in the wholesale lending industry, and when he entered the state service in 2006, he implemented the first mortgage broker regulatory program. And he has currently been serving as the Deputy Director of the Division of Real Estate since January of 2011. Our next board member is Mr. Fred Joseph. He is currently the Securities Commissioner. He's been serving in that position for 12 years now. He has his bachelor's in business administration from CSU Pueblo and an MBA in finance and accounting from Regis University. Our final panel member is Ofelia Duran. She is currently the program director of the Colorado State Board of Accountancy, and she oversees the Division of Registrations. And she's going to tell us a little bit about the offices that are included in the Division of Registrations. She has her bachelor's in management from CU Denver, and she's been working in government for 15 years. So if you guys want to go ahead and give them a round of applause.
Well, thank you. My name, as you already heard, is Chris Myklebust, or Chris, if we get to talk after.
Can you guys hear back there?
Okay. My name's Chris. If we get a chance to talk after the panel discussion, that'd be really cool. I should open by telling you my niece goes here, but she's going to be a researcher, so she's into all the organic chemistry and that sort of thing. So I was really excited to come here today because, when I heard that there were accounting majors, people that were interested in risk, I thought, wow, people that actually want to hear what we have to say. I mean, so many times we're stuck in situations where you just see the people's eyes glazed over, regulatory, oh my gosh. So it's really fun for me to be here today. Today I'm just going to touch on a few things, challenges that I experience being a regulator, some of the changes that I deal with as a regulator day to day and year to year, and then also just some opportunities that I also find in being a regulator and representing the state. So in starting with the challenges, the first one, which has been pretty obvious in the news and to all of us, is just that we are just coming out of the worst financial crisis that's occurred in the past 100 years. And so there's a lot of volatility in the marketplace. We as regulators, by law, we cannot voice our opinions, so we're kind of stuck in the middle. There's a lot of articles in the papers like, where were the regulators? Why didn't they do anything? And then you've got the other side, which is kind of behind the scenes, the bankers and maybe some of the financial institutions that have had troubles. They're like, well, we've been trying, to promote economic development and do all these things for the community. However, the regulators keep us from doing so, and because we have to keep quiet by law, we really don't have a chance to defend ourselves. And for people that are kind of outspoken like me, sometimes it's hard to just sit there and take it, but that's my job. In Colorado, we promote safety and soundness and consumer protection in the industry. And so at the end of the day, you just kind of have to think, well, we got to keep that careful balance. We want financial institutions to do very well, to be able to succeed, to grow, meet their mission and their strategic plan to reach out and market and help the community in ways that are going to help small businesses, that are going to promote commerce and help all of us, in our daily lives, buy what we need to, get the cars we need to, buy a house, all the things that we like to do. And sometimes, in times when we have a financial crisis like we're going through now, there's been a credit crunch, which means, there early on there wasn't a lot of credit out there to be given out. However, the government has been pretty generously giving money to the big banks and whatnot. So there's all sorts of challenges that come with being a regulator today, just in the structure of our financial system. Another challenge that we face on a daily basis is just the number of stakeholders that we have to deal with. I mean, we deal with legislators who come in and they have their passionate points of change that they want to make. And without necessarily understanding totally the system, the financial system that we have to live and work in, they are very passionate about certain changes that they want to see for their constituents or for the nation and whatnot. And it's my job to answer their questions when they have it, to comment on legislation that's going forward. We live in what's called a dual chartering state, which means that we have state regulators, but we also work very closely with the federal government, who offers the deposit insurance on your savings accounts and IRAs. So we have a very, I guess, traditionally a strict safety and soundness focus, whereas they come in with safety and soundness, but they've married that with a kind of with the viewpoint of an insurer too. So they obviously do not want to see losses from financial institutions because they're an insurance company as well. So sometimes creating that balance with the federal government as to what is safety and soundness and what isn't is a challenge, but it also makes it exciting. And then we also work with consumer groups. In a bureaucracy, we also have the structure of a state system, which I could probably go off in that direction, and I won't waste your time, but the structure and the rules and regulations that we have to obey just by being an employee of the state is not always conducive to being a good regulator. And so you've got all these, I've got all these stakeholders that I definitely have to work with and answer their questions and get along with. The final challenge that I just wanted to touch on is that I have a group of accountants, CPAs. They go into financial institutions and they're looking at a number of different areas at a financial institution, balance sheet, new investment type of opportunities that they want to get into. But we're a state agency, so it's a real challenge to keep astute and educated enough so that when I go in there and we're looking at all these things, we kind of have to be an expert in every area with very limited resources, and that's been a huge challenge for me. But dealing with change, we all have to deal with change, and that kind of sets my priorities going forward with how to allocate resources and whatnot. Because there are a lot of changes, and because we don't pay as much as the private sector for very, very talented people, one of the changes is we've got the change in turnover of our staff. So we're a great training ground for people that are really sharp, really smart. They're passionate about making a difference, but that passion, at some point, when you become tenured, that's worth money to the private sector. So they pick off our people right and left after about 3 or 4 years. So those are some changes that we have to deal with. Another change is just the marketplace in general. Under the challenges that goes right along with change, we've got an ever-changing regulatory climate where, you know, we don't really make the laws, but we're charged with enforcing them. So when like the Dodd-Frank Act becomes law, and then it starts feeding into rules and regulations, you know, it doesn't matter what I think about those at the end of the day. When they're law, it works its way into our examination programs and regulatory programs and our rules and regulations, and those are the things that we have to enforce. Then, because of all of these different changes, we also have the economy. When you put restrictions and regulations on financial institutions, that has a significant impact on the products and services that they're able to offer us as consumers. When we restrict their capital or credit, and they're not able to offer that to consumers, obviously those are things that I have to manage and figure out, well, oh my gosh, if they're not able to realize income on these services and products that they've been offering for the last 100 years, and now they're restricted in that, you know, I also have a responsibility not only to regulate them, but to allow them to pursue economic growth and opportunities that are going to make them better at serving all of us as consumers. So I hope you can see all the interconnectedness of everything that we do. There's no small decision. I mean, the decisions that we make affect every aspect of what a financial institution is able to do, which then impacts all of us on the macroeconomic level as a country, but also microeconomic level as family units about, you know, getting cars, homes, and the way we like to, you know, to spend or save our money. So why do I do this? There's the opportunities that I see that have kept me in this position is a chance to make a difference, to be a voice for change. I don't ever have the opportunity to be charged with making those changes. Most of those changes are dictated to us by legislative change that comes down. But how those are implemented and how we're able as a state agency to kind of balance the relationship between financial institutions and the federal government, I feel that those are all opportunities that, you know, that are unique. And, you know, I've worked out in the private sector before I came here, and I've seen abuses, and I've seen things that just made my stomach turn about the financial industry and how we basically just don't teach things in schools that on a day-to-day basis really people need to know. It's kind of like, you know, Wall Street, if you can view it as a monopoly game, they've read the rule book, but everybody else hasn't. Yet we're all supposed to compete in this equal level playing field and environment, and that's not the case. So just being able to have a voice for change has been worth it to me. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks.
Well, my name is Kerry Whitaker, and I'm with the Colorado Division of Real Estate. And I just want to tell you a little bit about who we regulate, how long we've been regulating them, kind of how that regulation came into being, and then what I'm seeing as far as the current state of our real estate market. So in the real estate division, we regulate 5 sectors of the real estate industry. The first are real estate agents or real estate brokers. They've been regulated since 1925, and currently there's about 40,000 of them. We also regulate appraisers. Those are the people that come out to your homes and establish a value, what the appropriate value for the lenders are in the market. They've been regulated since 1991. There's currently just over 3,000 of those. You know, when I came to the Division of Real Estate, I came from the mortgage industry, and I came to implement Colorado's first mortgage broker regulatory program in 2006. So as of right now, we have about 4,800 mortgage loan originators that are licensed in the state. It's important to note that in 2006, Colorado was only one of 2 states, the other being Alaska, that didn't have any oversight over these individuals. So, you know, if Wyoming beat you to the punch, you're probably a little late to the party.
That's true.
Also, in 2010, we started to regulate mortgage companies. But at that point, we were one of only 2 states, once again, that didn't regulate these types of entities. The only other state that didn't was Hawaii at that point. And we have very limited jurisdiction over mortgage companies, but we do have some oversight. We also regulate conservation easement holders. So when someone puts an easement on a piece of land in perpetuity that prevents it from being developed or used for industrial commercial uses, we oversee the entities that hold those easements. Those can be nonprofit entities. They can also be local and state governments and things like that. As of right now, there's 42 conservation easement holders, so there's not a ton of those. And the last major group within the real estate industry that we regulate are homeowners associations. You know, this is definitely, in the real estate world, this is kind of a hot topic right now. There's a lot of articles that you'll see in the Post and various papers. We don't have a true regulatory program over homeowners associations right now. It's just an information office. It's basically a formal study where we're collecting data, trying to gather information on what types of complaints are out there, and report back to the state legislature so they can make a determination if further regulation is appropriate. And so as of today, there's about 8,100 homeowner associations that are registered with the state of Colorado. We started regulating them in 2011, so that's our newest regulatory program. You know, one misnomer that I always like to talk about is, you know, there's kind of a misunderstanding out there that regulation of the private sector or private industries is kind of a government cram down. It's important to point out to you that each of these 5 sectors that we regulate, with the exception of the appraiser program, the industry came to the state State General Assembly and asked to be regulated. So I think that's pretty interesting for you all to hear that, you know, this isn't often just a cram down. It's the industry coming and asking to have this oversight. It's also important to note that, you know, we are a cash-funded agency. So what that means is the industries that we regulate pay for the regulation. We do not pull any monies out of the state general fund, and so they are paying for us to license them and to enforce the laws and to remove bad actors from the industry.
No tax dollars.
Right, no tax dollars. So, you know, you ask yourself, why would they want to be regulated? Why would they self-regulate to a certain extent? You know, one of the first reasons we see is to increase professionalism. And a lot of these programs have education and testing requirements to ensure that the people that are practicing in these industries are minimally competent to do so. They also, you know, want to be regulated to establish credibility. You know, when you can stay, you're state certified essentially, you're licensed, you've met minimum standards, I think that carries some weight out in the public. They also like to implement their best practices. You know, and regulation is a way for the industry to say this is what's appropriate, this isn't, this is what's not appropriate, and to ensure that best practices are used throughout the industry. And lastly, you know, to ensure that someone can take care of bad actors. When I worked in the mortgage lending industry, you know, one of the main reasons I started working for the state is I got tired of watching my good mortgage brokers have to compete with fraudulent ones. You know, they would go to, borrowers would come to them and they would tell the borrower, I can't do that deal because I'm not going to falsify your income or your assets or your employment or whatever the case may be. Well, unfortunately, there's, you know, hundreds of mortgage brokers out there that were willing to do that. And so it created an unfair and unlevel playing field for the people that were committed to doing and originating mortgages honestly. And so You know, that's one of the main benefits that regulation has is we can remove and take action against the bad actors. You know, in our division, we can revoke their licenses, we can suspend them, we can order them to pay restitution to consumers that have been harmed, we can fine them, we can require them to take additional courses and testing to correct behavior. So, you know, we have a lot of tools to work with people. You know, there's kind of two aspects to discipline. You know, the first one is really more corrective discipline, which is probably more focused on education, testing, correcting behavior. And then there's punitive discipline, which is really about fines and ensuring that they don't ever practice in the industry again, or that it's really kind of a painful process. And so, you know, I think it's important to touch on that. And then lastly, what I want to talk about is what I'm seeing as far as the state of the real estate industry today. In 2006, Colorado really started to enter our foreclosure crisis, so to speak, before most states around the country. You know, foreclosures have definitely hit really harder than probably any other city in the state on a percentage basis. But Colorado entered this foreclosure process about a year earlier than most every other state, and because of that, we're coming out of that problem earlier. And so right now, Colorado, you know, if you looked at Case-Shiller or other reports out there, you know, we really have one of the best real estate markets in the country. And another reason we're in good shape is because we didn't ever experience this extreme appreciation that the Floridas, Arizonas, and Nevadas of the world saw. You know, these markets were supposedly appreciating 15% every year for 5 to 8 years. And so their bubble became a lot bigger, and when it burst, it caused a lot more damage. Colorado, before this housing crisis, you know, our market we were really appreciating 3 to 5%. So we took a couple hits, but they weren't as big as in some of these other states. Currently, Colorado has historically low inventory of homes, especially in the first-time homebuyer market. As of today, we have just over 10,000 homes, condos, and residential properties on the market. This time last year, we had 17,000, so we're down 42% from last year. I'd also say the quality of the inventory is down. A lot of first-time homebuyers, it's tough out there to find a home that you can just walk into that's turnkey. You know, a lot of the homes that are currently on the market, you're going to have to put a lot of work into and make them, you know, bring them up to par. And so right now our inventory, you know, people have gauged that we have about a 4-month supply of inventory for real estate sales and transactions. Another aspect that's unique to our real estate market right now is we have a lot of shadow inventory. By what I mean by that is there's a lot of properties that have been foreclosed on but haven't been released onto the market yet. I don't know if you've been paying attention to a lot of the articles in the paper, but there's a lot of issues with loan servicing and this robo-signing thing with foreclosures. The Colorado Attorney General just had a huge settlement, as did every other state, with the 5 biggest banks, and that was what it was specific to, was really the foreclosure crisis. And so what we have right now is we have a lot of banks that are holding on to these properties. They've, you know, foreclosed on them, taken them away from homeowners, but they haven't put them on the market yet. So there's a huge inventory, a shadow inventory of those types of properties out there. And it's really a big unknown. We don't know how many of them there are, and we certainly don't know what type of shape they're in. A lot of them have probably been vacant for quite some time. With housing, the longer they're vacant, probably the worse shape that they're in. Right now, we also have a condo market that's extremely challenged. I mean, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to find financing on condos right now. And the primary reason is because lenders want them to be warrantable, what they call warrantable. What that means is that they have over 50% of the units are owner-occupied, meaning the people that own them live in them. And if they don't have that type of ownership, you're not going to really find any financing out there. These are requirements established by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and VA. And right now, the government-backed loans is pretty much the entire market. There's really no private sector lending right now, or securitization. Also, you know, we have a rental market that's at all-time lows. Our vacancy rates are about 5.6%, which is really extremely low. You know, right now our inventory kind of matches the vacancy rate, which is unique and unusual. You know, normally you'll see one offset the other, but that's not the case in today's market. In regards to mortgage financing, you know, rates are at historic lows. I mean, it's amazing where we see rates today. Every year it seems that they can't go lower, but then they continue to do so. But getting financed is more difficult today than it's been in the last decade. You know, when I was in the mortgage lending industry, as long as you could fog a mirror, you could get financing. Today, you know, you've got to meet all the standards. You've got to have good credit. You're going to have money to put down on a house. You've got to have a good debt-to-income ratio, meaning the money you're spending on your mortgage is offset by the income that you're bringing in. So a lot of lenders don't want your total debt to be over 40% of your gross income. And so it's a much more challenging environment for people who want financing. And that's probably why we're seeing vacancy rates extremely low. The good news is when I talk to architects and developers, you know, I'm hearing that architectural firms are doubling their staff. I mean, they are busy, which means development is on the precipice.
So, Kerry, are you saying everyone should change your major, or what should you do?
No.
What are we doing here?
I'm trying to paint an optimistic picture.
Okay, all right.
But what we're seeing is a lot of density development. And we're seeing a lot of apartments, condos, townhomes, multi-unit properties, and that kind of seems to be the new fad. But we are seeing a development of, and you know, we are seeing a resurgence of development, which means our economy, especially in Colorado, is on track. And that's definitely a good sign. We are also in a good place because Colorado's economy overall is in a very good position. I mean, I think we're one of the top 5 state economies in the nation right now. And so that bodes well for a variety of industries, but certainly does for our real estate market. And so that's kind of what's on the horizon. And then I'll pass it on to Fred or Ofelia.
Ofelia first.
Hello, thanks for having us here. I'm Ofelia Duran. I'm the program director for the Board of Accountancy, the offices of barber, cosmetology, boxing, and outfitters. I am a
So if anybody wants to know about boxing, they can find out.
I can answer questions about that. So I also work for Duran, that's the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and within that department there are many divisions. One of the divisions that I'm in is the Division of Registrations, and if the governor signs off on a bill that's currently on his desk, our name will be changed to something like Professional and Occupational Regulation, something like that, so that people don't think we are DMV as opposed to something else. So we regulate over 45 different professionals, so we have over 300,000 licensees that we oversee. I have just 5 programs, but just so that you have some idea of what our division does, we regulate your physician, your dentist, your veterinarian, your massage therapist, your barber, those kind of professions we oversee. Why that's important to you all, if you all are pursuing either a finance degree or an accounting degree, is in particular the Board of Accountancy, like many other boards in our division, even though, as you heard today, the Colorado legislature creates these laws that make or that bring a profession to be regulated. And so the legislature oftentimes will get information from us, the department, and also from the industry, from national groups, from a lot of variety of sources where they say, okay, this industry wants to be regulated, and once they try to put a law in place that says, well, here's what regulation looks like to us, and we have the responsibility of looking at that law, enforcing that law, and then creating rules for that. Well, as part of that overall process, every board that is within the Division of Registrations is comprised of board members that are appointed by the governor. And the reason why that's important to note here is there's actually a board meeting happening today. Hopefully some of you were here at the open session earlier today. But but those boards are created because even though the legislature creates the laws, the governor is saying you need to have a body in place that's overseeing this profession. And when they're overseeing this profession, the whole reason for existence is to protect the consumers. Consumer protection is the goal when we're regulating professionals. In particular for CPAs, I'll talk about that, and that is the Colorado Board of Accountancy exists to oversee CPAs and CPA firms. Now, many people think, well, I should become a CPA and that should be the ultimate goal, and that's fantastic if you want to go down that road. Same as you heard today, the legislature always says we need to establish what is the minimum competency requirements, or what are the entry-level requirements that are needed to get that license. And there are several components to getting that license. One of them is obviously taking the CPA exam. The CPA exam is a national exam. The Board of Accountancy, and many years ago, the staff used to be the ones administering this test. It was held twice a year, and only twice a year on the very day across the country. That does not happen anymore. Now it's held every day of the week. It's held it's no longer a paper and pencil exam, and you have 18 months to complete one session of the exam. And that's another thing that kind of changed is a person that was applying for the CPA exam, they had to take all 4 sessions in one day. I think it was a 2-day exam. Now you have a lot of flexibility in terms of when you take it, what section of the exam you take, that kind of thing. When a candidate has finished the CPA exam, that does not make them a CPA. It does not make them a CPA. We oftentimes see that the candidate passes the exam, they're not done. They still have to have 1 year work experience, they still have to take an ethics exam, and they still have to take a Colorado Rules and Regulations course. And once they complete all of that, once they go through all of that, then they can apply for the CPA license. When the CPA license is granted to the CPA, it sometimes will come before the board, other times it won't. The reason why the board exists is so that we have, again, to focus on balanced government. The board is in place. There are 5 CPA members and 2 public members. With most of our boards in the Division of Registrations, you will always find that there are professional members on the board, and then there are also public members. And the reason why that's important is because you don't want a board that's focused on the profession and not focused on what is it that the consumer needs. So it's the Board of Accountancy in particular, and what I'm responsible for is the overall. I oversee every aspect of the Board of Accountancy. Even though we bring decisions or we bring matters to them, so on the application side, we bring reinstatement applications, we bring misdemeanor issues to them, we bring felony issues to them, anything that's going on, they pretty much make the decision, and we are responsible for carrying out those decisions that they reach at a board meeting. The other side of it is once the person is licensed as a CPA, or any profession for that matter, some professions require that in order to maintain that license, you have to do certain things to maintain your competency or retain that currency of knowledge. In particular, the CPAs, they have to complete 80 hours of CPE every 2 years when they renew their license, and it's a 2-year license that they get from us. Why that's important is because CPAs, if many of you are pursuing that route or going towards pursuing an accounting degree, you can get into so many different areas. You can get into auditing, you can get into government work, you can get into, we've seen it all as far as I think the possibilities are endless for a CPA just because that knowledge base that it gives you. One of the misconceptions always is in order to do tax, one of the misconceptions that we often see is someone thinks that you need to be a CPA to do tax work for someone, and that's not true. The only reason to be a CPA is if you want to, A, call yourself a CPA, and 2, to do audit and attest work. So what happens is because so many people pursue that degree and that credential, we have right now about 15,000 actively licensed CPAs in Colorado and about 3,000 CPA firms. So you can tell that it's quite quite a large group of professions that we oversee, just the CPAs alone. The other responsibility that the board has is obviously looking at the CPA in terms of if they fail to comply with the statutes or the rules that the board has created. If that happens, the board will initiate a complaint, give that person an opportunity to respond to those allegations. They look at that matter and make a decision on what action is appropriate. It can lead to the point of revoking a CPA's license. But often, if there isn't enough information, the board clearly has the ability to investigate that matter further. The board, I think, believes through its rules, like we talked about before, the legislature is creating the law and the board has the responsibility of creating rules. Well, once it creates rules, because it has to go through very specific criteria, very specific time frames for filing rules, the board and the staff, as DORA staff, we have to comply with those rules that are in place. And if there's something that isn't working about them, say that we're too strict on the profession or that we put rules in place that just don't make sense anymore because maybe they're outdated, it's time to update those. And we can do rulemaking as often as possible. So the reason I bring up rules and the reason I bring up, participating in the board is many of you at one point could be a board member for whether it's the Board of Accountancy or being on being a public member on one of the other boards. It's also important to know that when these professions are regulated, there is always going to be, in most instances, professional responsibilities that a particular board holds that profession to. And once those rules are violated, they obviously need to be punished for that. The other interesting thing about working for a board is, and working for DORA, I've been there about 15 years and I've been in different divisions, in different programs that I've overseen. But what's nice to know about a regulation of a profession is that for most of our professions, there is a sunset clause in most of our laws that says after 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever the legislature deems, that program has to be evaluated again. And the Board of Accountancy recently went through a sunset review, and what all that means is the legislature is looking at them and we're essentially having to justify our existence. The legislature asks us several different questions. Do we still need to regulate as we are? What is it that we need to change about this regulation? And that goes through the legislative process, and then we make adjustments after the laws have been adopted. It is very fascinating, as you can probably tell from some of the things I'm sharing with you, just being involved in government, how laws are created, how rules are created, and then ultimately the fact that it impacts professions, it impacts businesses, small businesses, large businesses, and that can sometimes have an impact nationally. Thankfully for the CPA profession, there's a strong presence on the national side through the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. It's NASBA for short. Most states participate in this national organization, and the reason why it's important for Colorado is because we have outsourced all of our applications to them. So if any of you are interested in going down that road of applying for the exam, you start with them and not with the Colorado board. But I'm happy to, I think I'm already over time, so I'll obviously be here to answer questions. Thank you.
Hi, I guess I'm last. I'm Fred Joseph. I'm the State Commissioner of Banking and Securities, and we're going to start out with a pop quiz. Are you ready? Who has starred in 28 movies, 2 separate comic book series, one with Marvel Comics, the other with Dark Horse Comics, and had his own Hanna-Barbera cartoon show?
Could we get like a multiple choice?
Just guess. No guess? No guesses yet? All right. His picture's been on T-shirts, lunchboxes, and board games. His effigy's turned up in Roseanne Barr's living room, Murphy Brown's office, the movie Independence Day, and the opening credits of Siskel and Ebert. Come on, work with me. All right, I'll keep going.
Oh wait, somebody said Will Smith.
What?
Will Smith?
Nope.
Oh, whoever said it, you were wrong.
All right. He is also inspired. Okay, let's see how good if you guys are into rock bands here. He's inspired a best-selling line of toys, a song by the rock band Blue Oyster Cult, one of my favorites, and a series of books by Random House Publishing. He has appeared in such film classics as Destroy All Monsters and Invasion of the Astro Monster.
What year is this?
A long time ago.
Gee, I'm running out of things here, guys. Come on. All right. How about what's green, 400 feet tall, and each trains for breakfast? Godzilla. Thank you. Jeez. I was getting worried there. You know? Yes, that's correct. Now, here's the reason I asked that. What's the point of all this? And I do have one, by the way. Whenever anyone thinks of regulators as us, you know, that's what they think of sometimes as Godzilla stomping through everything, destroying everything in their path. And, you know, that's actually, sometimes I like to think we're helpful, too, at the same time. That we just don't exactly step on, you know, innocent people and all that stuff, as they did in 28 movies. Thank you, Godzilla. I'm in charge of two divisions, the Division of Banking and Division of Securities. Division of Banking, I'll start with, is responsible for the chartering and examination of about 76 state charter banks here in the state, holding about $35 billion in assets. And my examiners, I have a staff of 50 people, most of them examiners in banking, and pretty much they go out and do safety and soundness exams, you know, day in and day out. Primarily, most of them are business, finance, and accounting majors. The other division I'm also responsible for is Division of Securities with a staff of 25. And we license, well, three things. We license stockbrokers and investment advisors. We register certain securities, and we chase cases of securities fraud. We have approximately 172,000 licensed stockbrokers. Now, there's not 172,000 stockbrokers who live in Colorado, but it doesn't matter if you live in Vermont or Alabama or Nevada. If you want to sell here, you got to be licensed here. That's the way it works in every state. We have a lot of licensed stockbrokers here, primarily, well, you know, from out of state. One, it's easy to be a stockbroker. It's you like to have clients here, so you come and visit them in Colorado, maybe go skiing, go fishing, whatever. And secondly, it's very inexpensive to be a licensed stockbroker. It's $13 a year. So what's a fishing license? 20, 22?
25.
25, thank you. So it's about 10,000 investment advisors, 2,200 stock brokerage firms, which we're responsible for licensing. We register certain securities. If a security is like on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, we don't worry about. But if somebody wants to primarily raise money in the state, they need to probably get that security registered, and so that's with us. And thirdly, we chase cases of suspected securities fraud, and primarily we deal with Ponzi schemes. This is Mr. Charles Ponzi. The Ponzi scheme was named after him. He lived here around the early 1900s. He came to the United States around the late 1880s, 1890s, I guess. He became a successful con man. His name was into the English language. We all now know anytime you have money that comes from later investors to go to earlier investors is a Ponzi scheme, as in Mr. Madoff and all those guys. And that's Mr. Charles Ponzi, and that's who it's named after. Think about this for a second. How would you like to be named throughout history on an illegal scheme? Think about that. So we deal with a lot of these on a daily basis, and that's yeah. Matter of fact, I even brought a couple pictures here of some folks. Mr. Sean Mueller took about $75 million from investors in Colorado, including John Elway. And ultimately, he was convicted last year and sentenced to about 40 years in prison. Mr. Rick Dreyer, also convicted of securities fraud, real estate investment primarily, and took in about $40 million. He wasn't nearly as lucky, Mr. Mueller. He got 132 years. in prison. Mr. Bird, let's come back to Mr. Bird. Mr. Walters, ultimately he was indicted. He fled to Argentina for a few years, and then finally we got him back, and ultimately he's sentenced to 40 years in prison. Mr. Bird, he was convicted of securities fraud, took about, I don't know, $25 million from about 400 investors down in Colorado Springs, and ultimately sentenced to about 24 years. He pled guilty to 2 counts of securities fraud. He was sentenced to 24 years, and he pled in March. He was sentenced in October. Now, what do you think he was doing between March and October?
Security.
Thank you. He took in another $500,000 from another dozen investors, and $25,000 a day he was sentenced. I didn't say they were rocket scientists, did I? Securities fraud in Colorado is a Class 3 felony. It carries a range of 4 to 12 years prison time if one should be so unlucky as to get it. Not all our cases are criminal. We can also do administrative cases where I, as Securities Commissioner, can issue a cease and desist order against someone to stop doing that, or I can revoke a license, suspend their license, or do that kind of thing. And the other method is civilly, where I can go to stand in front of a judge in court and ask the black robe to, in fact, these people need to stop what they're doing. Plus, I would like to ask for restitution. So sometimes it's all three. Sometimes it's administrative, civil, and criminal. The cases end up turning criminal, and you end up going after people like that and putting away. I don't have prosecutorial authority. I have to convince the district attorney or the attorney general to take the case to prosecute it because I think they're bad guys and need to be put away. So that's in fact kind of in a nutshell, at least this from the security side, what we do. I just want to leave a little room here for questioning for any of us in case any of you have questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Talking about the real estate regulatory agencies, you said in Colorado it's entirely cash funded. Is that the same throughout the other 49 states?
I don't know about the other states. The real estate division is one of 9 divisions within DORA. And pretty much every
We're all cash funded.
The only program that's not, the only division that's not cash funded in DORA is civil rights. But every other division program the industry pays to be regulated.
No tax dollars. Yes.
Okay, I kind of have 2 questions. One of my questions is, what do you do and what do you do? Because I kind of miss you as an introduction. I walked in late on ours, I'll just happen anyway.
We're just great people.
I don't know what you do. Your years in real estate and your banking.
Go ahead.
Security first.
And then I am Ofelia Duran, and I'm the program director for the Board of Accountancy and for barber cosmetology, boxing, and outfitters. So I have a wide variety of professions that I oversee, and I'm just the program director that oversees those professions, but our division oversees over 45 professions because the legislature is continually, every legislative session, new professions want to be regulated all the time. So we continually get new ones. In fact, we have a new one coming up that's brand new for my area too. It's licensed private investigators.
Music therapists.
No, yeah, that one is not coming yet.
That was not coming.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that for sure.
I'm Chris Myklebust. I'm the Commissioner of Financial Services, and I regulate state-chartered credit unions, savings and loans, and life care institutions, which are kind of a high-end retirement communities.
Now, are any of you CPAs? Okay, I have a question for you because I walked in and you were talking about CPAs. Why does it take so long for them to actually be a CPA?
The reason it takes that long is because the legislature said when it created the law that you need to have 4 legs of what they are deeming to be minimal competence to enter into the profession. And so that's just the nature of how long it takes to get licensed. It takes a while to get through number 1, get through your education. Number 2, get the exam taken care of. Number 3, ethics. And then number 4, applying for the license. So it does, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the experience.
Yeah, the experience.
Yeah. Thankfully, right now, those of you who are pursuing that kind of degree, if you want to be waived out of the 1-year work experience and you want to use a master's degree towards getting the CPA license. I would encourage you to try to do that well before 2015. After 2015, the law is changing, and that will no longer be an option. You will need to have 150 hours of education plus 1 year work experience. Right now, there is a law that allows for education in lieu of experience. So thank you for doing that. But it takes a long time.
In the back.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. First question is, what's the difference between legal multi-level marketing and illegal multi-level marketing? And the second question is, how would you report illegal multi-level marketing?
The difference being, like take for instance Amway or something like that, or Armand or Mary Kay, is you're not actually trying to get new people to come in to pay. You know, in some of these multi-level schemes is you're trying to recruit people and trying to get them to pay some sort of fee. And if you're depending on the fee more than you're depending on necessarily to sell a product. Now, Mary Kay and Amway and all that, it doesn't, the more emphasis on selling the product than it is collecting a fee to move it up the pyramid, I guess. You know, multi-level marketing, illegal wouldn't be considered a pyramid. So that's the difference.
Okay.
25 words or less.
So what's the best way to report illegal multi-level marketing?
Probably call our office if you...
Okay, can I just talk to you after this then?
You know, your people call my people? Yeah, that's fine.
I had a question. What is the staff size in each of your divisions?
We have 15 people in our division.
46 in the Division of Real Estate.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. 75 total, 50 in banking and 25 in security when we're fully staffed.
Our division is probably the largest division in the department, and we have about 100 plus staff, maybe 150 or so. It's quite large.
And y'all, I'm sorry, you have to go through the government application process.
Yeah, if you just go to colorado.gov, all state jobs are posted on there. So, yeah, if you ever want to apply for a job, you have to go through that second position. You can't just go and pluck people off the street or anything like that. Everyone has to go through the formal job process.
If one is applying for, say an examiner position or auditor position, it's useful to have some experience already in the industry. Our bank examiners generally have been in banking and that kind of thing. Our security examiners have worked for an investment advisor, a stockbroker, that kind of thing. The investigators that I have at Securities are primarily police background or former military or something like that, because of the investigative skills are different than examining skills. So there's always good to have some knowledge base from the industry.
Yeah, and in fact, within the state personnel system, there's every position has established minimum qualifications. Generally, that's education and some experience.
But it is well structured, and there are paid intern positions. So if you want to learn and you don't have that experience, those positions do exist and come along once in a while.
Ofelia, did you get to choose which areas you get to be a part of?
No. I like the diversity.
All right, well, I know we're getting close to switching time for classes, so thank you everyone for coming. And I know that they said they'd stick around for about 10 to 15 minutes to talk to any of you on a one-on-one basis. So thanks for coming, and thank you guys for the wonderful presentation.